Hi, it's Anna Mason, and in this watercolour mini class I'm going to show you how I painted this tulip so that it pops off the paper. This type of tulip looks quite simple due to its petal structure, but as you'll see, like most flowers, it's not so simple when you take a really close look at all the colours within it. I worked from a photo reference and began by making a faint pencil outline drawing of the edges of the petals and stem. My first layer of watercolour was to match to the lightest highlights in the petals. It was a really pale and watery pinkish purple which, because it could sit underneath the darker purples I'd be applying later, I painted across the whole flower, working in the direction of the veins on the flower. This way, any overlaps of paint I got, even in this early stage, would be helpful in creating the vein effects. I held back from the area right at the base, which was a different colour. Next, I applied a second layer of the purple mix everywhere except the areas of highlight so that I could clearly see them, working with the tip of the brush to create some of the striped markings into those lightest areas, and then covering the rest of the tulip. Then I applied a pale yellow-green mix to the stem, mixing a little of my purple mix in to create a colour for use on the transition area between stem and petals, watering it down for the shapes in this area. Now is the point I did something that feels a little strange. I went in with my darkest tones or values, in this case the rich dark purple mainly present where the flower is in shadow on the right hand side. I aimed to get the shape of that shadow area right, and as I was painting onto dry paper there was no bleeding of the paint. Then I watered down a touch to extend the paint into the slightly lighter but still very dark parts of the petal. Now I began to work on the midtones, working with a pretty watery purple mix that contained both some bright pink and a touch of some red-brown to try to match to the hues that I could see in the left part of the flower. Again, working with my brush in the direction of the vein markings on the petals. Then I added some of my Payne's grey, a very dark blue grey, to create a more muted and blue version of my purple mix, for use mainly on the right side. And then I combined the two colours to apply elsewhere. The rule is to apply to any areas this tone or darker, holding off from ones that I feel might be lighter. Observing the subtle shifts in colour within each part of the enlarged petals is what really adds to the realism. I added more of the red-brown in and darkened the mix a touch to work in the bottom area. Then I used a slightly darker mix to darken a few more patches, including the transition area into the very dark parts. Much of the darkening of the petals needs to come from applying very fine vein line details, but I needed the colour that will be visible between those lines to be dark enough before I applied them, because darkening once those lines were added in might have meant that the lines got lifted off by my brush. For that reason I also darkened the highlights some more because I could now see, having darkened up around them, that they were too light. Next I used my small brush and a thick dark mix to begin painting the vein lines to the darker areas, making sure to try and get the angles of them right so that they help give the petals a sense of form. But I felt they were still standing out a little too much, so I used the larger brush to darken a bit more with the watery mid-tone mixes in a few areas. Then I added more veins with the small brush, holding off from the highlights. This served to darken parts of the petals, so in turn I could see that my lighter areas needed further darkening, which I did now, always making sure the paint underneath was dry. To make it easier to make further tonal adjustments to the petals, I next darkened up the stem and the base of the petals using thicker versions of my previous mixes there, and making sure to build a darker line to the right side of the stem which was more in shadow. Then it was time to make an all-important cup of tea and come back to the tulip with fresh eyes to look for more areas within the flower to darken and add detail to. I mixed up a few of the different colour mixes to work with, and then began to paint the larger patches I could now see needed darkening. It's amazing what a tea break can do for helping you see clearly. There are a few dangers with tea drinking when painting, but look out for my tip for avoiding them at the end of this video. Looking back and forth from the reference photo to my painting, I picked out larger patches and more fine lines, and made subtle adjustments to larger areas, always making sure my paper was dry so I minimised lifting off any of the brushwork underneath. I darkened the darker mids with another layer, before adding lots more fine lines, and making many micro adjustments with pale mixes. This is a very meditative process that's really absorbing and enjoyable, and it really pays off in terms of creating extra realism. The focus is on making sure everywhere looks dark enough and the right colour, matching to what I see, neatening edges and refining detail. And with all of those adjustments made, the tulip was finished. A full video class of this tulip is available now in my online school. If you've enjoyed this tip video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and then hop on over to annamasonart.com, where you can take a full-length video class for free and find loads of resources to help you pick up your brush and paint the way you've always wanted to. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon to help you create watercolours with wow. I just want to urge caution when bringing your teacup into the vicinity of your water pot, because as most artists have experienced, the tea then exerts a gravitational pull on your hand and your paintbrush will end up in the tea. I tend to always use my second hand to just brace my first hand so that it's less likely to happen, but even that isn't foolproof, and oh yeah, it's happened again.